All right, picture this. It's February 8th, 1945. Up above, you've got these dark, icy ocean waves churning away. But right beneath the surface, a totally silent, incredibly deadly game of cat and mouse is playing out. Welcome to this explainer. Today we're unpacking a really intense historical mystery. We're talking wartime desperation, literally unbelievable on-the-fly mathematics under extreme pressure, and a toxic legacy that's actually still causing huge problems today. We are heading back to the final months of World War II to look at an underwater duel that permanently changed naval history.
Okay, so let's dive right into this. Because before this specific day in 1945, there was pretty much one absolute unbreakable rule in naval warfare. No submerged submarine has ever sunk another submerged submarine. It just didn't happen. Subcombat was almost always fought on the surface, or, you'd have one sub submerged while the other was totally unaware up top. But sinking a submerged enemy while you are also submerged, honestly, people thought it was practically impossible. The physics, the math, the sheer blind luck you'd need, it was just off the charts. But in the span of just a few terrifying hours, that impossible fact was about to be completely shattered.
So our story really centers around this German U-boat, the U-864. It's pushing through the icy sea on a desperate top-secret mission all the way to Japan. If you can imagine the inside, it's just this claustrophobic, red-lit nightmare. Standing right there in the control room is Korvettenkapitän Ralf-Reimar Wolfram, and he issues the command to maintain heading 270. Now, what makes this so incredibly tense is that this is actually only Wolfram's second war patrol. He's got this massive burden on his shoulders, navigating these suffocating depths with a crew whose lives literally depend on every single choice he makes.
And we really have to talk about the stakes here, because they could not be higher. Packed deep inside its steel hull, U-864 is hauling the blueprints and the actual technology needed to build Japanese M262 fighter jets, V-2 rockets, and, get this, potentially even nuclear weapon technology. I mean, this is absolutely not your standard patrol. If this cargo makes it to Japan, it could literally rewrite the end of the war. U-864 is basically a submerged vault of world-changing secrets.
But then, out of nowhere, disaster strikes. A massive bang echoes through the sub, startling the whole crew. The engines start to just violently thump and chug, and the entire submarine is vibrating like crazy. Wolfram gets on the intercom, demanding a report, and the news from the engine room is about as bad as it gets. The air compressor has completely malfunctioned, and it's severely damaged their diesel engines in the process. So the Japan mission? It's over. They have to abort. The crippled, vibrating sub is forced to turn around and start limping back toward port for repairs.
And this right here perfectly illustrates how a mechanical failure can snowball into a fatal human error. Wolfram is terrified. He knows enemy subs could be lurking anywhere, so he wants to take a look around. Now, normally, a captain uses the attack scope. It's incredibly thin, super stealthy, and great for scanning the surface waves. He risks raising it, takes a peek, but sees nothing. But here's the catch. That thin attack scope is pretty useless for checking the sky, and Wolfram is absolutely paralyzed by the thought of an Allied aircraft attack. So he makes a fateful call. He orders the surveillance scope raised instead. This scope has a much higher angle to check the sky, but it is way bulkier. Pushing that thick pipe through the water creates a massive frothing white wake, which accidentally broadcasts his exact position to anyone watching.
And as it turns out, someone is definitely watching. Lurking silently in those freezing waters nearby is the British submarine HMS Venturer. The second-in-command, Lieutenant Andrew Chalmers, is straining his eyes through the periscope when he spots it. There's no mistaking that bulky head and the huge white wake of a German surveillance scope. Now contrast that with Venturer's commander, Lieutenant James Stuart Launders. Launders is playing it smart. He's using his ultra-thin attack periscope, just taking these tiny, lightning-fast peaks to stay completely invisible. Launders takes a look, confirms it's a U-boat, and immediately orders Venturer to close in. Estimated range 2,500 yards. The trap is officially set.
Suddenly, down in U-864, the German hydrophone operator hears something that chills him to the bone. Cutting right through the noise of their own clunky, damaged engines are the propellers of HMS Venturer. Wolfram instantly realizes they're being hunted, and he immediately orders evasive maneuvers. Basically, he starts zigzagging. The sub is changing course every few minutes, and the whole point of this is to just utterly confuse the enemy. Think about it. If you are constantly shifting your angle and your speed down there in the dark, it becomes pretty much impossible for someone to predict where you'll actually be by the time a torpedo physically reaches you.
So, the really crucial thing to understand here is how Lieutenant Launders tackles this completely unprecedented problem. Remember, attacking a submerged, zigzagging target? Never been done. It required absolute on-the-fly mathematical genius. First off, Launders has to shadow the U-boat, turning to starboard just to silently pace them. By matching his sub's heading with the U-boat's visible periscope, he can start triangulating their relative speed and bearing. And the crazy part is, Wolfram is actually helping him do it, because Wolfram is so anxious about aircraft, he's keeping that bulky surveillance periscope sticking right up above the waves, giving Launders the perfect visual anchor.
So, peering through his stealthy attack periscope, Launders starts piecing this giant puzzle together. By measuring exactly how far that German scope travels against the backdrop of the ocean over a set period of time, he locks down their speed. The U-boat is doing exactly 3 knots. Launders is watching intently, and he starts to realize he's dealing with a pretty inexperienced captain. You can only imagine the suffocating tension inside Venturer's control room right now. The entire crew is dead silent, just watching their captain try to invent a brand new firing solution in real time.
And the level of precision we're talking about here is just staggering. Launders has his pencil frantically scratching away on the navigation chart. He's standing there with a stopwatch, literally timing every single zig and zag that the German sub makes, mapping out the exact lengths of their turns. And then, it clicks. He figures it out. He has mathematically plotted their evasive pattern. The German captain isn't just turning randomly. He's making exactly 10-degree course alterations every single time. Launders has found the rhythm. He knows exactly where that sub is going to be.
Okay, so the suspense is absolutely peaking now. Someone shouts, "He just zigged, sir." Launders clicks his stopwatch. Tick, tick, tick. They are just waiting for the U-boat to zag back to starboard, knowing it's going to cross right into their firing path. Sweat is literally dripping off Launders. He decides to set his stopwatch to exactly 15 seconds. Why? Well, based on that 3-knot speed and the 10-degree turning radius he just calculated, Launders realizes that if he waits exactly 15 seconds between firing each torpedo, he'll create an inescapable net. No matter where U-864 tries to hide within that 10-degree zigzag, one of those torpedoes is mathematically guaranteed to intersect its path.
And the attack begins. Launders yells, "Fire tube 1." The torpedo surges out into the dark. Over on the U-boat, they can actually hear the launch. Wolfram panics and orders a desperate crash dive to starboard. The whole submarine shudders as the torpedo just barely misses them, smashing into the rocks of a nearby island instead. Launders checks his watch. Exactly 15 seconds later, fire tube 2. The U-boat is still frantically diving, and the second torpedo races right over their heads. He fires a third, another near miss. But here's the terrifying part. Wolfram is now prepping his own counterattack. If he survives one more dodge, he's got 4 torpedoes ready to fire right back at Venturer. The whole battle literally comes down to Venturer's 4th and final torpedo. Fire tube 4. The last torpedo leaves the tube. On board U-864, the doomed crew hears that final weapon rushing toward them. They try to push even deeper into the sea, but it's no use. Launders' math was absolutely flawless. That final torpedo violently slams into the U-boat right amidships. It just tears the heavy steel hull wide open, letting in a massive onslaught of freezing water. In mere seconds, that flooded middle section becomes way too heavy to support. The structural integrity completely fails, and the submarine is brutally snapped into 3 separate pieces, dragging the entire crew down into the black depths before they even have a chance to understand what hit them.
Back on the Venturer, the hydrophone operators sit in silence, listening as the horrific crashing and gurgling slowly fades into nothingness. They had actually done it. They achieved a historical first. A submerged submarine successfully hunting and sinking another submerged submarine. But the cost was 70 German sailors who lost their lives. The mood on the British sub is incredibly grim. There's no cheering, nobody is popping champagne, nobody wants to celebrate the deaths of 70 fellow mariners, even in the absolute heat of a world war. They met a really dark, watery grave.
But the story of U-864 actually doesn't end in those icy waters back in 1945. Decades pass by, the broken wreck is just resting quietly on the seabed. But remember that highly classified, world-changing cargo we talked about earlier? Well, as the steel hull naturally rusts and corrodes away over the years, all those poisonous chemicals and hazardous materials locked inside start seeping out, finding their way into the surrounding ocean and severely poisoning the marine environment. The deadly threat of U-864 didn't vanish when it sank, it just sort of evolved.
And it got so bad that by 2018, we're talking more than 70 years after the sinking, the threat was so severe the Norwegian government had to step in. They launched this massive, completely desperate operation to literally bury the broken submarine in a giant underwater sarcophagus made of sand and rocks. It is a staggering feat of modern engineering, and it's designed entirely to prevent a total ecological catastrophe. And incredibly, that delicate containment operation is something they are still monitoring to this very day.
Which really leaves us with this final, kind of haunting question to think about. Can we ever truly bury the dangerous secrets of our past? Or are we really just delaying an inevitable catastrophe? U-864 was brought down by this amazing combination of brilliant on-the-fly mathematics and one single fatal mistake at the periscope. But the toxic legacy of that deep-sea duel is still sitting right there on the ocean floor, serving as this quiet reminder that the scars of history are rarely, if ever, truly erased. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those big questions, keep exploring the past, and I will catch you in the next one.